support this podcast at patreon.com/Kris Karl Photography Podcast. The way that I always try and start these so that everyone coming into it has the same sort of platform to work from is that we know how you found photography and what your history with photography is.
Well, I was shooting mainly digital at first. I've been shooting for about 10 or so years now. I didn't really get into film, which is now my main way to shoot photography. That was about 5-6 years ago, something like that. And I never really pursued it professionally. I mean, I think everybody that gets into photography at one point, it shoots weddings and things like that. And I still do that on the side. But I found out my dad had cancer 3 years ago. And when I found out he had cancer, what really helped me was just getting away from everything, grabbing my camera, putting in my headphones and going for a walk. So I've used it in the last 3 or 4 years now as like an outlet to not only express myself and be creative, but just to take some time for me because I go to school full time, and it's nice to have that alone time to, create and make something.
So why the transition then to film?
I think it was just kind of a natural progression. I like film a lot because I like older things and I feel like I can tinker with it more. And I like cameras that don't have light meters and things that are mechanical. And with film, you get such a, I don't know, it's just it's hard to explain, but I get a feeling when I shoot film that I don't when I get digital. I like the constraint. I like to shoot a lot of medium format, and that's pretty much like my main thing now. I just bought a Fuji GW690, and I only get 8 frames per roll. I really like that I had to make every shot count. Everything that I do it with a purpose. Not that I have a flow or anything like that. I like the look. I like getting my negatives back and looking at them and things like that. And also, I think the main thing that's pushed me towards film is mainly the community. Wedding photography, street photography, there's all these little communities. And I find that film photography is the most welcoming. And there's nobody trying to hide their trade secrets and stuff like that when it's talking about using different film stocks or different cameras and things like that. I think everybody's just excited that to have the same medium and we like shooting film. Yeah,
I have to say, I'm only sort of short term into it, but I'm definitely seeing the same thing. I mean, weddings, I'm obviously talking from more of a UK perspective here, but there really isn't all that much of a community whatsoever. Like I've reached out to people from the wedding industry about doing the podcast or maybe just having a chat about weddings in general. And they're almost immediately suspicious and like you're trying to hijack something. Right. Whereas the film community, when I've reached out, because I'm completely ignorant on the subject, I've reached out to people and asked them, what about this? How do I do that? Where can I find resources for this? Everyone's come forward and then they've actually followed up before I've had the chance to and said oh, and also, by the way, you should check out this thing or check out this guy. And yeah, it's definitely a really nice community. One thing that I'm a little bit sort of, I guess, still trying to figure out is the resurgence. Why has there been such a resurgence in the last, I guess, maybe 5 years?
I think that like anything, the old becomes new again. In the 90s, I was born in 85. So that gives you kind of my age. But, in the 90s, 80s music wasn't that cool. And now 80s music has become cool again. In the 90s, 70s music was cool. And I think it's just that what is old becomes new again type thing. And I think that has a lot to do with the resurgence. Also, kids now that are 18, 19 years old, 20 that are shooting film, they didn't grow up in a household that shot film. My first camera was a film camera that my parents bought me. So I already kind of knew the medium, and then that wasn't new and shiny anymore. So everybody switched to digital because that was the new latest and greatest thing. And I think some of us are trying to hold on to that simplicity of shooting film.
Right. So let's talk about cameras then. You've already mentioned one, but what's in your current sort of setup for film shooting?
I have probably the worst case of gear acquisition syndrome of anybody. Right now, I probably have 15 cameras, but my main go-tos are an RB67, a Mamiya C330, a Yashica 365. I just got the Fuji. My favorite camera of all time is the Olympus XA2. So I have quite a few, and they come and they go. I'm leaning now towards more TLR cameras. I'm finding that's my sweet spot, and that's what I really, really love. So I'm probably gonna pick up a couple more of those. Because I love shooting them. There's just something about them that makes me feel happy whenever I take them out.
How do you decide between them? Obviously, with so many, what scenes get what cameras?
So what I did was I bought the cheapest version. I wouldn't say cheapest. I bought a decent camera in every style of camera. So before I decided I want to buy a Leica, I don't own a Leica. But before I was going to decide if I was going to buy a Leica, I bought a Canon 7 and tried that out. Figured I didn't like it. So then I'm like, okay, well, Leica's not for me. I just shot a zine with static age zines. And I stuck to one street that I live on, and I bought a Yashica 365 to use it for. And I use one camera, this TLR, and I use only Portra 400 to shoot my one street. And when I was done with it, I said, well, I really like this. So then I upgraded to the Mamiya 330. So I've just kind of been going through them, buying like that. And then I'm trying to find like an heirloom style camera. Now that I like TLRs, I might invest in getting like a Rolleiflex 2.8 or something that I can have for a really long time. But I just didn't want to invest that kind of money until I knew this is a style of camera that I would enjoy for a long time.
When it comes to like picking between sort of 35 millimeter or medium format, I mean, you've already mentioned that medium format is probably your primary focus, but are there scenes that more suit going to 35 millimeter for you in the way that you shoot them, or perhaps in the way that they come out on film?
Not so much like a scene, because I don't set off to shoot a particular anything. I just kind of ride around my neighborhood where I live at. Anything that catches my eye, I shoot a lot of things that are mundane that you would normally pass by. That's kind of my style that I have. But like, for instance, it was my mom's birthday the other weekend. So I brought a Canon A1 with me because it has 36 frames. And that's a better job than bringing out my Mamiya that gets like 12 photos because I'll be going through rolls quickly. So I think 35 millimeter has its place for things like that, weddings, events. If I'm going to shoot a wedding, I normally carry my Nikon D750, which is my digital camera, and I carry a Nikon N80, which is my film camera, and I can carry both of them. They take the same lenses and things like that. So I think everything has its purpose. But as for me shooting, I don't have a particular goal in mind when I go out.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about when you head out. Do you sort of pre-visualize the idea of what you want to go and find, and then you go out and you sort of seek it down and you patiently wait for it? Or is it something where you are, okay, so first of all, do you camp, or are you someone that moves around? Do you hunt? Yeah,
I hunt a lot. So I normally go, I live in Chesapeake, Virginia, which is like a suburb of two bigger cities, Norfolk and Virginia Beach. So lately I've found that I don't need to drive far away to get photos that I like. So I've been sticking more where I live at. And what I'm finding is that I've been passing by these buildings for 30 years and just never took the time to really look at them. And I mean, if you look at my photography, I don't think it's particularly good or interesting just because I see it every day.
Right.
But I just like shooting, and it gets me out of the house. And if I see something that might catch my eye, then I stop and pull over and do that. Or if I'm going for a walk, I'll just bring my camera along with me and park somewhere and kind of walk the neighborhood.
Okay. What is it that's catching your eye? What's the thing is there something that catches your eye too often and you're kind of like, I can't keep shooting that, I've got to move on?
Yeah, I've kind of like gained a name for myself for shooting corners of buildings. And I've kind of just embraced it, because every roll that I would shoot for like the last 2 years, there would always be a corner on it. And then I'd put it on Instagram and somebody's like, oh, here's another corner from Jason. So I'm like, well, you know what? Like, I'm just kind of going to embrace that now. And I like lines. I like shooting midday. So cause I like shooting I use Sunny 16 cause a lot of my cameras don't have light meters. So F16, 500 a second. And I like that everything's in focus, and I like architecture and line works and stuff. And I think that for me personally, I don't know if you have Captain D's over there in the UK, but Captain D's is like kind of a crappy seafood restaurant. It's like a fast food restaurant. We
don't, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, but my idea is like, if I can make the Captain D's look good, then of course I can make anything look good. So if I can make something mundane beautiful again, I shouldn't have a problem later on if I want to really pursue this and make something out of it. Because I'm just there's no knock to landscape photographers or anything like that. The work is gorgeous. But I don't have that here where I live at without traveling. So I feel like I'm trying to make my mundane suburbs beautiful landscapes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things I think that gets lost in the mix a little bit, is the ability to make something that people maybe walk past and don't pay attention to, but to pick out one detail of it and draw out some kind of beauty from that. As someone that photographs models, I think that far too much appreciation is given to people that photograph attractive people, because it's pretty much the easiest thing in the world. It's harder to make an attractive person look unattractive than it is to make them look attractive. Whereas if, like you say, if you can pull a seafood restaurant and make it look attractive, then that's definitely doing something. What are you using in terms of film?
I use a lot of, I'm a big fan of Kodak Portra 400. And I know that sounds like, I'm sure that's going to be everybody's saying. But I think, and I've said this on a couple of podcasts and I say it all the time, and I could be wrong. I think that Portra 400 looks better when you're shooting at 200 than Portra 160. And I think Portra 400 looks better at 800 than Portra 800. So I like to have one film stock that I could rate at different speeds and just keep using the same film for it. So I don't have to bring a whole bunch of films with me. I just bring one film and then meter it for the time of day and the scene that I'm shooting.
Right. Well, you don't shoot a ton of black and white from what I can tell from your feeds. So what is it that you're not a fan of when it comes to black and white?
I think, I go through a phase. And I think it has to deal with, like when I found out my dad had cancer, I found myself shooting a lot of black and white because I was sad, you know, and I think that played into the stuff I was shooting, and it was more depressing looking. Now I'm trying to force myself to be happier, and I think color makes me happier. So that's what I've been gravitating towards. I'm trying to change my mood with the art that I'm making, if that makes sense.
No, it's just a pretty admirable thing to do. I think a lot of people spend their time when it comes to doing something artistic or creative, just worrying about getting as good a feedback and as high a volume of feedback as possible. And actually, it should be something that you're doing for yourself and to make yourself happier. So I think that's a pretty admirable thing to say. Yeah,
I don't understand. I had another Instagram account that I deleted in November, and for some reason it got to having like 15,000 followers or something like that. So I deleted it to start over again. And now it's like growing back. And I don't really understand, other than I'm a pretty nice guy. I mean, I talk to everybody, but for some reason people like my work, and I really appreciate it. I just don't see it in my own stuff, but I think there's something there if people are telling me that. But I never want to be egotistical, or I think once you go about looking at your work in a way where you're like, I perfected this, then you're never going to grow anymore. So I want to continue to grow and be hard on myself so I can try to be better in the future.
It's something I've seen since basically at the end of last year, which feels like about 4 years ago at this point. But at the end of last year, I decided I wanted to go onto this like personal project and do some street photography and some architectural stuff that I really don't touch in my job or day to day, and just kind of learn as much as I can from that. And I found that community, as well as sort of the same way as the film community, are very hungry for new work, but they're very humble. Everyone's very outgoing when it comes to compliments and feedback and stuff. And I've come from the like portrait fashion side of things, where it's a slightly different setup. You generally find that the majority of your positive comments are people that are leching over the subject of your photo, and the rest of the comments are either only directed at either the photographer or the model, or they are just outright negative comments. I mean, it can be a fairly vicious thing to be around. And I see now this new community that I'm in no way like good enough to contribute to, but definitely to look at and to admire the work. And I'm just amazed by how supportive everybody is. Sticking with film really quickly though, do you do your own developing?
No, actually, I send it all off to a lab. I live in a condo and we're selling this condo that I'm in now. It's kind of a smaller spot. It's 2-bedroom. But we're selling this and we're moving into a bigger, like 4 or 5 bedroom house. And then once I move there, then I'll be able to have my own office and I'll start developing then. Because I never wanted to do it unless I could really do it right. And I don't have room for a scanner. I know you can do it with DSLR and macro lens and stuff, but I want to do it right and have a printer and a setup like that. So I'm kind of waiting and saving up my money. So when I do move, I can set it up in a way that I can do it justice. And then I don't feel like it's such a time sink. And then sadly, my dad, he passed away in March. So that's kind of freed up some of my time because I don't have to, go down there all the time. He was in Carolina. So now I have a little more free time and I'll graduate from college next April. I'll get my master's degree. And then I feel then I could really do it justice and take the time because I don't want to just be rushing. You shoot a roll and come home, rush through it and stuff. I think some of the fun is you send it off. I got to wait a week to see if I even turned out right. And I kind of do like that.
Yeah, I was actually talking yesterday to a film retailer in England, and I was saying that one of the things that I've discovered since starting is just how much the delayed gratification is actually so much more enjoyable than that constant feedback of looking at the back of your camera. When it comes to the way that you shoot, what do you think that your worst habit is when you're actually out photographing?
My worst habit is something that I recently broke. I used to shoot. Well, I was buying a bunch of cheaper cameras and not really investing into it. And I would have a bunch of cheap cameras and stuff, but I would use that as an excuse to why my photos weren't as good as I wanted them to be. And I'm like, well, like the camera's just not, I paid $20, $5 for the camera. So of course it's not going to be that great. So I quit making excuses for myself and trying to take things a little bit more serious. When I never shot a zine or anything like that. So when I shot this zine for Static Age, it's coming out next month, I like really tried to stick to a project. And that taught me so much that not only should I got to start thinking about, well, if I'm gonna take a picture that's wide, I need to get in closer and get some detail shots as well. And I'm starting to apply that thought process moving forward where it's okay to just do things good enough if you're having a good time. But you can have a good time and actually try to. I thought there was like some kind of compromise being made. Well, like if I'm trying, it's going to become work and then work's not fun. So I'm not going to have fun.
Right.
So I'm trying to like take it a little more serious and I'm finding out that I can take it more seriously and I can also have fun at the same time.
Well, you mentioned earlier about your zine. And for those that are out of the know, what is a zine?
Yeah. So zines is a punk thing. I don't know the exact history, but I think it was either London or New York back in the day. These punk groups were making magazines to have their own publications. And then now photographers have kind of taken it and made it their own thing too. So it's like a small photo book of a collection of images that typically have a certain theme, or most of them have some of the good ones have a theme. So like I said earlier, my theme is just same cheap little camera, same film, shot on one street. And I think it has like 60 something photos in it.
So it's kind of like an editorial in a sense. It's
yes. Yeah.
It's like a photo essay.
Right. Yeah. It's like a photo essay or a little portfolio. The sky's the limit. You can put as much time and money into it as you want, or you could do something that's cheaply made and you can do it at your house.
And is that something that you use as like a challenge to yourself to push things forward or to get something out of your system? Yeah,
you can. I've started making some kind of in the same vein as the Static Age. He's in London as well. I started helping a couple people and I put together about 5 or 6 zines for other people in the last like 2 or 3 weeks. And for everybody had a different perspective on it. Some people wanted to do it just so they could hold something in their hand that they created. Others just didn't have the time to put one together. So they asked me to help and I was glad to help. And other people wanted a portfolio piece that they could show to a client. So there's several routes that you could do it. Ultimately, it's like anything. It's just up to the photographer what they want to get out of it.
You're obviously talking about your master's degree and the family things that you've been working on and now selling where you're living and so on. You're obviously incredibly busy. How do you stay interested in photography, I guess, when your mind has got so many other things to deal with?
I find it to be a nice break. I was in the military for 8 years. I got out of the military when I found out my dad had cancer. And then I went back to school. I got my bachelor's and I'm working on my master's degree. And I find it to be just kind of like a breath of fresh air. I have the type of personality that if I continue to work, I'll work until it's time to go to bed. That's just the type of person I am. So having an outlet, whether it be on Instagram, helping to run our little community on there, or whether it's taking pictures, it's a nice outlet to get away and take some time for myself.
I mean, you photograph a lot of architecture and you're in it's very strange because I'm very much obsessed with American architecture and American landscapes. When you're from England and nothing's really allowed to be aged at all before it gets renovated, and because we haven't got the space, I find America absolutely fascinating. Is there anywhere that you really want to go and photograph that you haven't had the opportunity to yet?
See, that's one of my biggest regrets. I wasn't that heavy into photography when I was in the Navy, but I've been to, oh my gosh, like 17, 18 countries. I've been to Australia, South Korea, Japan, Malaysia, India, Dubai. I've been all over the world because I've deployed a bunch. And I never thought to bring anything with me other than like a point and shoot. So I wish I'd have brought it. I was into film back then, or at least like good digital photography. But I would love to go back to Hong Kong. That's out of all the places I've been in the world, Hong Kong is by far my favorite. It's the only place that I could see myself living in outside of the United States.
Really?
Yeah, I love it.
How come?
I think it's comfortable. It has a comfortable feeling because most people speak English, so you feel welcomed. The people are extremely friendly, but then again, it's totally different from America. And when I would go overseas, like I went to Australia, we went to Perth. Australia is the beautiful people. It's a beautiful place, but it just felt too much like home because it felt Americanized. And I feel like if I went to England or somewhere like that, I would feel this. It's kind of the same. We're just kind of different. But I think Hong Kong is so different, but also kind of the same. It's just it's a nice feeling.
Well, if you'd like to come and live in England, I can give you some places that are very far off of being Americanized and would definitely give you the impression of maybe not having those luxuries.
Right.
So I think something that people are going to take away from this, I'm definitely getting the vibe, and you've kind of brought it up, is you're a very positive person. You have a very positive outlook, and that's always such a wonderful thing to be around. So I hate to be the pessimistic British guy to come and bring this down, but I'm always fascinated by pulling on certain things with people. What do you think is okay, so to you, what's your most hated photo cliche that people do?
Oh, I think my biggest one now, and it's become way more popular, is making digital photos look like film.
Yeah.
And the editing style is fine. Like, I don't mind that. Like, if you want to use presets on your portraits and stuff, like I use the Maston Labs Kodak presets on my portraiture work, digital photo work. So there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that. But like when they add the little borders to make it look like film, I see that so much because I don't know if you know, I help run with some friends Restore from Backup on Instagram. So we see a lot of photos. And sometimes they catch me. I got to look at it a second time. Like, this looks digital, but it has the film borders. So that's my most hated thing. I just wish people would shoot film.
Yeah, or just accept that you're shooting digital and don't try and dress it up as something else. I mean, I have to say the conversation I had yesterday was about, some of it was about the borders. I think the borders are hilarious. My favorite is when they get the black and white border and they put it on a color image or vice versa, and they're just not even checking what they're doing. I absolutely love that. I do know you from Restore from Backup. That's actually how I found you. Was I started following Restore from Backup quite a while ago with one of my other accounts and went down a rabbit hole, and that's led to like probably 200 photographers I think I've ended up following as a result. I actually wanted to ask you about this, the importance of of pages like Restore from Backup, these sort of co-curated collages of multiple artists' work, what's the importance of that?
I think so. I do my best. It might seem samey as the other ones, but I really try to be different from the other ones. And instead of just sharing photos and stuff like that, I've really tried to make this as much of a community as possible. And on Instagram, it's kind of hard. But we have a Facebook group that has about 1,000 members in it, and it's active every day. That feels more like a community than our Instagram account. There's far less people, but I mean, people are posting and they're asking questions, and people are getting help they need. And then we have a Twitter account. We have a subreddit. We have a website now. We're featuring photographers of the month and things like that, and doing like little interviews. But I wanted it to be more than just sharing photos, because anybody can do that, really. And I've always looked at these other ones as they're just kind of half-assing it, excuse my French, because they're not really trying. So I try to be as vocal as possible to try to help as many people as possible. And in return, it helps me too, because I don't have any photographer friends that I know personally or that live around me. So by reaching out and talking to people, it's helping me as well, because now I'm learning more. Maybe I can help them. Yesterday, I did a little live stream on our account when I bought the Fuji, because somebody asked me how big it was. So I brought out my Mamiya RB67, and then I showed the size difference, and I was talking about the cameras that I have and things like that. And one person said they got something out of it. So as long as one person gets something out of it, that I did my job for the day, I feel, and giving something back to the community that I love. Whether it's through, I fixed somebody was giving away an Olympus OM10 that didn't work. I took it apart, cleaned it, CLA'd it, put it back together, and then I gave it away to somebody whose camera was broken. To help them out. So I think that there's so much we can do to help each other as a community, that it doesn't have to stop at just sharing photos. It could be a lot more if we just kind of put in a little more effort.
100%. I think that's pretty much the embodiment of the film community right there, is that kind of sense of not charity, but camaraderie, and trying to help each other out, and not afraid to ask for help as much as to give it. As far as Instagram goes, has it led you to find lots of photographers that you're now huge followers of?
Yeah, absolutely. I've met some people that I would call my real friends, like real life friends, through Instagram. Zach and Han, who run Restore from Backup with me. We talk every day. We know about each other's personal lives. We're asking how our significant others are doing and things like that. It's just not about photos anymore for us. We three have become friends, and it's like that with a lot of people that I've met through there. I think some people are scared to strike up a conversation. So I feel like it's my purpose to do that for them, whether they like it or not, and just kind of, guide people and just start chatting. And people, I share a photo and somebody says, thank you. I'll ask, how's your day going? Or so I'll add a little something to it, and maybe we can strike up a conversation. And who knows, later on down the road, me and them could be friends.
Yeah, 100%. I actually had a photographer whose work I came across through a curated account about 2 weeks ago. So I gave him a follow, and I was looking at his work. Every day he's posting, and I absolutely loved the work. And I send him a message and say, look, I'm in love with your work. You got to come on the podcast. Your work's incredible. And he came back and he was like, well, I don't have much of a following. And I was like, look, that's not, how on earth could that possibly factor in? Like, I don't know who has the biggest following, but I imagine it's probably one of the Kardashians. And I couldn't think of someone I'd want to talk to less. So it has nothing to do with that, and everything to do with talking to people whose work I love and want to share. And he started talking about some of the stuff that's going on in his private life, and we had this really long, deep conversation. And that side of it is just, it's really nice that I think sometimes people, not just in terms of like photography communities, but I think in general, people struggle with actually talking to other people about what's going on with them, because it's almost been like this social media way has been trained onto people where they have to constantly show everything as being the best thing, and every part of their life is going wonderfully. And yeah, I think it's nice to have people that can kind of see beyond that and want to reach out. As far as your favorite photographers, who are you always looking out for?
I don't know if I have one. Everybody that submits their photos to Restore from Backup is my favorite photographer. Is that a good one?
There you go.
Can I get out of the question with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
I know so many people. There's like Kodak Nick and Zach Parks and Han Fan, Clouds of Disillusion. You had him on the Snyder. You had him on your podcast. There's such a ton. I know Jason Chambers. He's a photographer from Atlanta, Georgia. Everything that he posts is phenomenal. I'm a big fan of his work. I also like people's work that is the complete opposite of mine.
Right.
I'm drawn to that. Yeah. I like how you like American culture. I like a lot of landscapes and stuff like that. That's why I share a lot of landscapes, because I just don't have that here and it's foreign to me. So I'm really attracted to that.
It's also good as well when you're putting together ideas and you're putting together inspiration for yourself to have stuff that doesn't directly speak to what you're trying to do. Right. Because then you don't end up kind of subconsciously mimicking everything that you see. And all you end up is becoming like an amalgamation of all of those influences. By having outside influences, it might actually bring something new into your work that someone else hasn't thought of. Is there any genres that you haven't really attempted that you'd like to give a go, given the opportunity?
Yeah, I would 100% love to get into like nature photography and bird photography. That's how I see myself as an older gentleman, is being a nature photographer. I was at the park. This has been a good while. It's probably been 2 years ago, something like that. There's a local park that has a pond in the middle. I was going for a morning walk before work. It was probably 4:30 in the morning, something like that. Kind of still dark out. And I met a guy. He was like in his 80s, and he was talking to me about, he's like, oh, I saw my camera, my Nikon camera. So we had a chat, and he's retired now. So what he does is he just sits out here on Sundays and Mondays and takes pictures of birds. And I'm like, this is the most relaxing thing I could think of. I would just absolutely love to be a part of that. It's peaceful.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things I think's become underappreciated by the digitalization of photography is enjoying the process of taking the picture, not the process of the picture being taken and how quickly you can get it online for people to pay attention to. It's actually just enjoying the time that you spend taking photos. Every year I try to take sort of 2 to 3 days to go to a place not far from here. We don't have much wildlife in England. It's not that exciting, but we do have deer. And I try and go on like a little bit of a walk. I got married at a royal park that's called Richmond Park. And I try and go sort of for 2 days at least a year and photograph the deer there right around the time that my anniversary is. I just find it really nice. And because my main job is around so many people, I actually really like not being around people and having that break, you know? We've talked about your, I don't want to cause any problems here for yourself or anyone else, but we've talked about your problems with gear acquisition. Is there any cameras that you've got your eye on that you would absolutely love to pick up if given the opportunity? Yeah,
I think I've had my eye on a 500 CM for quite a while now. I think what's going to happen is I'm just going to keep putting it off until I finally buy one. And I've been trying to buy. This is my process. I'll have like $1,500 to say as a budget where I could buy one. And then I'm like, I'll just get this Fuji instead because I won't spend but like $400. And I'll make excuses. I'm like, well, now I don't have enough money for it, so I can't get it.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's almost time for me to upgrade from my D750. And that's going to be a huge investment to go mirrorless. And I'm thinking about switching to Canon, which is going to cost me like, $5,000-$6,000. So I can't really, film's my hobby and I don't make any money from it. So it's kind of hard for me to justify spending $2,000 on a camera that's just going to get thrown in the side of my car when taking photos when my Yashica 365 does the job for $100.
Yeah, no, I've been fortunate enough to have a good friend lend me his 500 CM for sort of the foreseeable future. And it took me a couple weeks just to get over the actual viewfinder. It's such a stunning viewfinder. And using the 150mm f4 is just, it's such a beautiful. I use it for portraits, so probably not exciting for you. I'm sure you'd want a different lens, but it's a pretty crazy lens.
Yeah, when I bought my Mamiya C330, it has the 80mm blue dot lens, and it came with a 180mm f4. So now that COVID's going around, all my weddings and stuff have been pushed back. But I plan on shooting portraits with my Mamiya to see how they turn out with that 180 millimeter lens. I'm sure that'd be pretty nice.
Well, the compression mixed with the depth of field on medium format is unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's cool. I think it's funny here in the States, if somebody shoots weddings with film, they'll be like, oh, this is fine art. And I'm like, I don't know if it's fine art or not, just because it's on film. But some lady and her husband, they wanted family photos done. And then they're like, oh, we know that you shoot film. Can you do them in fine art? And I'm like, oh, I guess we can try to get you a gown and we'll take you to the church and make everything nice and like that. And they're like, no. We just want to go to the park like last time, but just shoot them on film instead of digital.
All right. That's weird.
I'm like, oh, that's not really fine art, but okay. If that's what you want, that's fine.
That's a really strange expression.
Yeah.
All right. So I think there's going to be an abundance of people now, hopefully, that are rushing over to your page, and definitely need to go and follow Restore from Backup as well, because it's a great way to just have a constant stream of amazing photography in your Instagram. And that's what photographers should be using Instagram for. For those that haven't shot film before, who've grown up in the digital era, what advice would you give them if they are thinking about jumping over to film and giving it a try?
I think the biggest thing is don't worry about what kind of camera that you're going to buy. I think pick something in the style that you think that you would like to enjoy and buy a camera based off that. If you're looking for an SLR, there's some absolutely solid picks, the K1000, the Olympus OM10, the Nikon FE, all less than $500. If you're looking for a TLR, you don't have to buy a Rolleiflex. You can get Minolta Matte or Yashica D. And all these cameras can be had for $100 or $200 that'll get you pretty much the images that you're looking for. So don't worry about spending a whole lot of money on a camera. Worry about taking the photos and then find a camera that you think you'll enjoy.
Yeah, 100%. I have to say, it's been wonderful to talk to you. You're such a positive person, and well, I'm a pessimistic British guy with a bad attitude. You're a wonderfully positive guy with a really beautiful radio voice. So,
oh, thank you.
What I do want to know before we go, and we have to do this with every episode because it's entirely the point, is where can everyone go to find your amazing images?
Oh, I am Jaser, JASER.Hunter on Instagram. You can find me on Restore from Backup on Instagram. Restore from Backup has a website, restorefrombackup.org. That'll kind of give you the gist and show you where you can find everybody. Zach and Han and Nat, she runs our Twitter account. If some of the photographers that have already been on your podcast or been featured on there, and we have interviews with their work if you'd like to see more of that. And that's basically it. If you're looking for some mediocre photos from a nice guy, you're in the right place.
I'd have to completely disagree with the mediocre part. I think your photos are fantastic, and it's very rare that maybe from the sort of part of the photographic world that I come from, in terms of ego going with ability. It's nice to have a chat with someone that's obviously so talented, but such a positive and wonderful guy. And I really do appreciate you taking the time.
I'll tell you before we go, I'll tell you this. And I've learned this over many years. My dad passed away on March 17th. On March 20th, I lost my job. So I lost my dad and my job within the span of 2 days. And there's nothing about it that you could do. So no matter how hard your life is, what comes your way, there's always somebody that loves you. There's always something to look forward to, and there's always a reason to be positive. And that's what keeps you going. You just got to find the positivity in life, and it'll find you too.